Awesome. We have our next workshop starting right now with ceramic, titled Getting Started with ComposeDB. I see Matthew has joined us. How are you doing, Matthew?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Very well, thanks. Just had a great workshop, and yeah, looking forward to getting going with your one. So I think we will pass straight over to you to get going. And yeah, feel free to share your screen.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and start the share, and hopefully everybody will be able to see it. Looks good on my end. Hopefully it looks good on your end. If it doesn't, holler at me. Okay, cool. So yeah, we're going to talk about ceramic today, and more so ComposeDB, which is our newest feature ship that we have. It's currently in a developer preview, so if you're going to try to build in production on it, we'd recommend you probably don't do that just yet. Give us a little bit of time, build alongside of us, and we'll let you know when production works. So we're not going to spend the whole day in PowerPoint, but there are a couple of things we want to talk about, such as who I am. So I'm the developer advocate on the team over here at 3Box Labs, which is responsible for the ceramic network. And our main product right now is ComposeDB. If you're unfamiliar with it, basically we kind of aim to solve a few things. First and foremost is today's data is pretty siloed, and it has centralized control. And what we mean by that is if you were to go log into your Twitter account, you don't have access to your Twitter data. You see what Twitter wants you to see. They display that in a feed. Same with Facebook. Nobody was in control of how much of their data was sold or anything like that when it comes to Facebook. So what we really hope to achieve throughout all of this is giving the user control over their data, but to do it in a public way. So users have data that they want to be public. We don't want everything in our lives to be private. And if I want that to be public, hopefully that's on some standard that is open and available to any app to be able to use that data in a way that they see fit, as long as me, the user, still controls it. So we have two things that solve this. The first one's ceramic, which is the network itself, which is responsible for like proving the state of the data, making sure that the data stays up to date, communicating across all the nodes, decentralizing the data, all the infrastructure related things that come along with decentralized data. And then there's ComposeDB, which is like your actual database layer, the interactions you're going to have with your user data from your application, so from your front end to your back end. You can think of it a lot like a decentralized Mongo database to some degree. It is largely a document storage database today, and it's built using GraphQL schemas. So if you're familiar with GraphQL, you can dive right in, build schemas quickly, and we have a couple front-end libraries that help with the querying and mutations of that data. So yeah, that's a quick overview, but really to understand why we exist is to understand the problem. And one of the big problems we can highlight is the user journey, right? If you think about it, every time you go to an application, you probably have a sign-up form. You need to enter your name, your birthday, some location. Maybe once you're logged into the app, there's preferences for that site, such as like dark mode or notifications or whatever it might be. But then when you go to social app B, you have to do the same thing. You go to social app C, you have to do the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. And the worst part about it is you don't have any agency, right? The moment you put that data into their form, it's now theirs and they're free to do whatever they want with it. You agreed to the terms and conditions, and that's just the way it is. And that kind of sucks. It would be really nice if we could solve that journey for the user, and we do that through our decentralized network for composable data. And what we mean by composable data is the user can now enter that information one time on a decentralized network and say, hey, this is like my profile, essentially. Every time I log into an app, my name is always my name, my location is always my location, my birthday is always my birthday, and maybe those aren't the fields that you want to make public, but the point being is the information that I want public stays public, and it travels with me from app to app rather than being siloed on the application's back end. And we do this through a couple different key pieces here. So the first one is like through data composites. These are model instance documents on our network. And these are the actual like data schemas and stuff that we're going to interact with from the front end. ComposeDB is that interface layer that takes that front end and pumps it down to the network like we talked about a few minutes ago. And then we have like the node, which is responsible again for all like the proof and the communication and aggregation of all that data. Why all of this matters to the user is you don't have to do this over and over again, right? Like one, you own the data. It's sovereign to you. It's yours. It's up to you to do whatever you want with it. It's portable. You don't have to repeat putting in all of that information. Any app that understands the schema can utilize that data, unlike needing to constantly post the same picture 2 or 3 different times across different apps. As long as your application understands the picture schema, then it'll be just fine. And the user can post that picture once to their essentially their decentralized profile, and it will go everywhere. So it's super reusable, and it's just a whole lot better of an experience for the user. It matters to developers because now it's not your problem. And that's a huge advantage. You're not absorbing the risk of holding users' data. You aren't having to generate a bunch of data to make sure your app works when you first start. Like users are going to bring their data to your apps, so you don't have to build all of that data from the ground up. And that really just gives you the time to focus on being unique and innovative. If the data already exists, you don't have to solve the data problem. The users did that for you. So all of that sounds great, but it's even better if we play with it. So I'm going to walk you through a demo. The demo is kind of going to be broken into maybe 3 different sections. First section is just some prerequisites. I'll show you how to install this and get it up and running. I'm probably going to be looking off to the side because that's where my monitor is. So forgive me if it's weird. But we're going to go over prereqs. Then we're going to go into like the build time data modeling. We're actually going to set up some data models from scratch. They're not going to be anything like super awesome, but it'll show you the process. And then we're going to go into runtime usage of those data models. I'm going to show you a really cool built-in server that we ship that you can run your GraphQL queries. And you guys are actually getting a live first look out of everybody in the entire community. Yesterday, we finalized basically like a Create React app version of Create Ceramic app. So you're going to get a live look into this new tooling that we're releasing to the developer community to help you get up and running with the Next.js app tied into Ceramic right out of the gate, which is really simple. It's super cool. I'm beyond excited to show that to you guys, but you're the first people to see it. So it's kind of cool. So we're going to do that, and I'll show you how to change that app. It's not going to be pretty. The changes aren't going to take time to make sure that the styles line up and make things look nice, but you'll get the general concept of how to change it so that you can build in your custom data models. So with that, let's jump in and start. So I'm going to work in this terminal as much as I can. If I have to go to my other one, I will. But first thing, let's install those dependencies. So I'm going to grab these 2 things, and I recommend using PNPM. That's what we use to manage all of our packages. We will be bouncing back and forth to NPM in a minute, like when we reach that Create Ceramic app thing. But for now, PNPM. Install these globally. It's just a whole lot easier. You're going to use them a lot. The first one is the Ceramic Network CLI. Don't let CLI fool you. This is actually the daemon, the node, the Ceramic node that we talked about earlier that's responsible for the proof and the data aggregation and all that. Even though it's labeled as CLI, it includes the daemon, so you need it. And the next one is ComposeDB, which is how we're going to interact with and create data composites and use the GraphQL stuff during build time to get our application ready for runtime. So I'm going to go ahead and install those. It's going to take a second, shouldn't take too long. You might see some warnings and stuff. All of that's perfectly fine for now. And just like that, we're done. So if I were to try to do anything, I can't. I need to actually set up the configuration. So I'm going to come over to this terminal, and oh, my terminal's glitching, sorry. There should be a folder, or there won't be when you first install it, called Ceramic, but after you do that, you'll have a folder called .ceramic in your home directory. Mine's currently empty. I deleted everything just to show you how fast this could be. but we need a configuration file for Ceramic. And the easiest way to get one is to let Ceramic do it for us. So I'm just going to start the daemon. And it's going to start up. This is actually running the node. You'll see there's all of this set of configuration options right here that come in. That's fine. We're not going to dive too much into those, but that's all we needed. We can kill this now. So I'm going to hit Control-C to kill it. And now if I'm in here, I have this config file. And I'm going to need that in a moment, which is why we did that. We need to add some stuff to the config to get up and running. So the thing that we're going to add to the configuration is basically a DID, a decentralized identifier, which is you can think of it like a public key or a decentralized username to some degree. It's basically going to be what allows us to administer the Ceramic daemon along the way. So we need to create one, and you're going to need to do this regardless of when and how you're using Ceramic. But we're going to use ComposeDB, the ComposeDB CLI, to do that. So I'm going to use this command, which is ComposeDB. It's going to then generate a private key for me. So I want a brand new private key. I'm piping that into a file that I'm just creating here, just so that the private key doesn't end up on the screen. I'll probably still screw up and show it anyway, which is fine because I'm going to throw this away. But safeguard this. This is a private key. It needs to stay private. So we're just going to do this. And boom, we now have a private key. And the next thing I need to do is take that private key and generate the DID that's going to be associated with it. So again, it's going to be DID from private key. And this is just a little Linux magic to read that file and take it and pump it over to this command. You could very much so just copy and paste your private key and hand it to this command and you'll get a DID. Great. So we have this. This isn't secret, but we're going to want to copy this. And then we are going to want to open our daemon config. So that's here. And with that open, we're going to look for this line that says admin dids. And that's what we just created, right? So we're going to put that in quotes and paste it in right there. And we're going to save this and we're going to close this configuration file and we're done touching the config. Nothing more for us to do. But if we want to continue doing things on Ceramic, we need this running in the background. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run it with a special variable that says, hey, like use the new fancy stuff for us. Actually, let me clear my screen and paste it up here. So I'm going to say, enable the new fancy stuff for ComposeDB and then run the Ceramic daemon. We'll do that. And we're going to get the same output as before, only this time you'll notice that the config is set the way it should be. That's all the configuration we're going to do, but I am going to leave this running. So this is going to stay running. This is how we're going to read and write data, right? Like this is our actual database interaction right now. I'm going to leave it running and go over to a different terminal. That's your prerequisite, right? So boom, done. Let's get into data modeling. So data modeling exists during build time. So we're going to make this a little easier on ourselves. We're going to make 3 folders. I'm going to call one models. This is where our schemas are going to go. I'm going to call one composites, and I'll talk about what the difference between those is. And then one called definitions, and that's where like our runtime representations are going to go. So I'm just separating this to be a little easy to deal with for organization purposes. Let me move this. It seems like Zoom has jumped in the way. So in the models folder, I'm going to create a new file and we're just going to call this a comment. And this is a GraphQL file, if I can spell. And this comment is just a schema of like what like a comment on a blog post might be. It's nothing crazy. So I'm going to paste this in. So you'll see the type is a comment. It has this create model primitive to it, which tells Ceramic or ComposeDB like, hey, this is going to be a model. Build all the GraphQL bindings for me. There's a couple other pieces of metadata to this. We're not going to dive super detailed into these because I really want to get to the front end part of this. But you can find all of this information on our docs for ComposeDB. And basically, this comment has 3 fields. There's an author, which is whoever creates it. It has a version and some text, and that text can be 2,000 characters. So that's what a comment looks like for us. we're actually going to create another model. And so we're going to come in here and we're going to say, hey, let's make a person. GraphQL again. And our person is very similar, right? It's going to use that directive to create that model again. And a person has a first name, which is optional, a last name, which is optional, but a display name, which is mandatory. And if you're new to GraphQL syntax, there's a ton of resources out there to teach you what some of this stuff is. And we also cover it again in our documentation. So that's all we're going to do. That's it. We just designed 2 data models that we're going to use in our application. So we can go ahead and close these. We're not going to touch that side of it that way for a while. But ComposeDB doesn't speak GraphQL, right? It allows us to design our schemas in GraphQL. What we actually need to do is now turn those into composites, hence our composites folder. So we have models, which are our schemas. We could have named it schemas, and maybe it would have made more sense. But we have composites, and composites are going to be the converted GraphQL into JSON that ComposeDB understands. And to do that, we use the ComposeDB CLI, which is why we installed it earlier. We're going to composite create. We're going to take that comment and we're going to turn it into this JSON file. So we're going to do that, and no controller specified. Weird. You're probably going to run into this error, and that's because we need to set the private key to the one that we generated earlier in the terminal we're in. So we have the DID, which is the username. We need the password. So I'm going to export that private key. And again, I'm going to cat my private key file. Oh, it's not here. I must have made it in the wrong spot. See, I knew I was going to end up showing you guys this, this file. So be it. Let me just grab the private key. It's not important, and we'll restart the ceramic daemon. The demo gods got me. We'll paste this private key in here. Excellent. And now we can run our command again, and boom. Now we have the converted composite. We can come into our composite folder. We can see it here. It has all the metadata and stuff that Compose needs in order to do the right thing with it. So we could format that so you could look at it, right? It's just payloads and signatures and other things. So we need to do the same thing to our other one. So let me grab the person, and I'll move this back up for you. Do it to a person, and great. So now we have these 2 composites, but the problem is we can only pass one file to our front end. So we need to merge them. And we can use another command from the ComposeDB CLI to do that. So we're going to say, hey, take all of our composites and merge them. And we're going to merge this JSON. We're going to merge this JSON. We want a file called merged. Merged composites just contains all of the metadata needed for our models into one file. So that's great. Now we have, if we come in here, we should have merged composites. It moved to the wrong spot. That's okay. I must have typed it improperly, which is fine. Not a big deal. I'm going to go ahead and merge this, or move that into the composites folder just for organization purposes. So the only file we're going to use from here on out is the merged composites. And now we need to take and turn these into runtime definitions. So right now they just contain metadata for Ceramic to be able to use. What we need is for them to contain GraphQL bindings for our front end to use. So we're going to go ahead and hit and do that. So we're going to compile the composite. We're going to take the merged composite file, and we're going to turn it into a definition.js file. And this will be useful for any JavaScript front end that we want to use. But I'm also going to do that and turn it into a JSON file, because this is useful for the built-in GraphQL server that we have. And what we should see is now inside of definitions, we have the merged composite file turned into runtime definitions. We can actually start interacting with this stuff now. The easiest way to do that is to fire up the built-in graphical server that comes with ComposeDB. So you can say, hey, give me a GraphQL server, and go grab the definition.json. Notice when we're using the CLI, it's JSON. We're going to use the JS in our front end. Okay. So we hit that, and now we actually get a local running GraphQL server. So we can come over here and paste this in. And I know it's tiny, but we can do GraphQL queries now. So I will go ahead and very simply do this. We're going to paste this in. Here's what a query looks like in GraphQL. Again, tons of docs, but last name, first name, display name. That looks awful familiar to our model for a person, right? Last name, first name, display name. That's exactly where that's coming from. We can go ahead and hit query. And obviously we don't get anything because we haven't created one yet. So I know we're running real tight on time. So I'm going to run really fast through this and I'm going to show you the front end thing and then open it for questions. So if I wanted to create one in this tool, I create a mutation and then I need to pass in some variables. Boom, we do that. So now I'm going to create a person that has a display name of admin person, and I'm not going to supply a first name and a last name. We're going to do this and hopefully voila, boom, there we go. We now have what we need. That's existing on the Ceramic network right now. There's now an admin person associated with this DID. All of that's great, Matt. That's really cool. I know it is. Thank you. You probably care about how do I get up and running with my actual application though. So since we're low on time, we're going to skip the next piece to this because I really want to show you this front end tool. The next piece was just more of the same with the other model. Okay. So I'm going to do this right here in the same folder. So right along here, I'm going to end up creating a folder that houses our app. So we have a new tool called Create Ceramic App. Just came out yesterday for me, and it's coming out right now for you. So you can use npx. You're going to grab Ceramic Network, Create Ceramic App, and you're going to run clone. And you're going to do that. And it's going to ask you for a project name. I'm just going to call this my app, and we're going to use the ComposeDB stuff. It's going to clone it, and right here, you have an application. We see the end of my app. Cool. We can run npm install. But what I do want to show you is how this gets up and running. In this source folder, here's the definition.js, right? That's the same definition.js that we created up here, just for a different data model. So you can copy those over. But what's really cool about this is it provides a context for you. I know this screen's getting messy here, but it provides a context for you that wraps the Ceramic API. And if you go look into the public pages here, you can see that it's actually pulling in a basic profile, and you can see all the hooks that you might need. And right here's the part that you care about, and that's your GraphQL, how to set up your GraphQL queries on the front end. I'm just going to show you this running, and then I'll open it up for questions. So we're just going to do npm run next dev. I'll show you what this looks like so that you can get an idea on how to get started quickly. So this runs on localhost 3000, and it looks like this. And if I hit login, it's going to prompt me with the sign in with Ethereum flow. So this is all CWE, it's customizable. I'm going to go ahead and sign this message, and bam, now it's reading this profile from the Ceramic network for this wallet. If I fill this in, say my name is Matt, my description is I'm awesome, my gender doesn't matter, and who needs an emoji, I can then update this profile, and it's now going to write changes down to Ceramic. When it's done writing them, it's going to repopulate this form with what's there, right? The app itself isn't what's important. What's important is that you have a bunch of scaffolding code right here to get up and running that fast with that create ceramic app command. And so just to show you that command one more time so you can see it, boom, right here. And it's going to give you that sample app with all the code needed to start interacting with ComposeDB. The last thing I'll say on that is if you don't want to use ComposeDB and you want to use old Ceramic, this tool is flexible. Just pick the other option when you start. So that breezes through everything. 45 minutes sometimes isn't enough. You guys always want to know who's building. We got DAO House, we got Metagame, we got Gitcoin, we got some new projects out there. One called Carbon Title, another one called Brandonate. Feel free to join our Discord. Click that QR code, you'll pump over to our Discord. Check us out on our forum and all this other stuff. And of course, we're hiring. And I will leave this up for a minute so you guys can all look at that while I open the floor for questions.
Thank you, Matt. That was really interesting. And as Matt said, feel free to write your questions in the chat or unmute yourself and ask it live. Just while people are thinking of questions, my one would be, what are your top tips for using it for the first time?
Start slow. Use the new tool, the Create Ceramic app. Grab that. What we ran out of time to some degree is that also comes with like a prepackaged in-memory ceramic node. So if you don't want to go through all that infrastructure setup, you'll need to do a little bit. You'll still need to grab the initial like daemon and stuff, but it will automatically configure. I can show you that quickly. It comes with like a pre-configured seed and everything, right? So like, here's the admin seed, that's the private key. So it did that step for you. Here's the file that is the configuration file that we edited manually. It did it all for you. So if you're really looking for the low effort way to get started, grab that new tool and you can figure out how to interact with our network very quickly. And then you can branch out into, hey, I need to make this more production robust. How do I do that?
Awesome, thank you. I see that there's a question in the chat.
Yep, great question. The question is there a way to get info stored on a database with just a public key, or is the only way to sign a transaction with the private key? I think what you're trying to ask is, how do I do read and writes? Reads are all global, so you do not need the private key to read. Again, this is open public data. Any data you put on Ceramic, anybody in the world can read as long as they know the ID of the stream. What you weren't able to see because I didn't put the field in here is each one of these documents that gets created has a unique identifier. If I know that unique identifier, I can read the data, which is by design. It should like open data, right? Like it should be that way. So you do not need anything private to access data that exists on Ceramic. You can read anybody's data that's there right now. However, if you want to update or write data, you need a private key, which is the sign-in with Ethereum, generated a private key and everything I need. So I, as the user, can write my data and the things that are applicable to me, but nobody else's app or person can change my data but me. So private keys are used for writing, and public keys, or DIDs rather, are just there to help like limit what actions you can take on a node, but all the data is globally readable. How can I store private or send? That's the follow-on question. I love it. Yeah. So how can you store private or sensitive information? Right now, you can. Nothing actually stops you from encrypting any of that data and storing it on Ceramic. What does stop you is just the fundamental flow of how it works. Think about it. If I had a username and I encrypted it and I stored it on Ceramic, and then I went to go use your app would display my username as an encrypted string of junk. It wouldn't know how to decrypt that, right? Because the encryption decryption flow is app specific. So you're siloing the data again. So argument number one is don't store anything that you would need to encrypt. Argument number two is there's a really awesome protocol out there called Lit protocol. I'm sure there's others, but Lit is the one I'm most familiar with that handles encryption in a way that plays really nicely with Ceramic. They actually have a guide or two written specific for encrypting data and files with Ceramic. The problem is it's written for old Ceramic and not new ComposeDB, but all their concepts still apply. You just have to change the API that you use a little bit. So I would recommend, if you really need to encrypt stuff, look into a protocol like Lit. That's the #1 way to get it done in a decentralized approach. The other way is yeah, you might need to kind of mix and match these things. Nothing stops you from mixing or matching Web 2 tech with Web 3 tech. Honestly, in a Matt opinion, not a Ceramic opinion, I think that's the step we skipped when we moved to Web 3, and there's probably some actual hybrid model that makes a lot of sense. Good question.
All right. Just going to post a link in the chat. This is to the Lit workshop as part of the next video build hackathon. So hopefully there's some synergies there. So yeah, worth checking that one out.
Awesome. Well, it looks like I've hit my time. So I just want to say thank you guys for having us. Thanks for sitting through 45 minutes with somebody that's slightly crazy. I appreciate it. Hopefully you guys are able to get up and running with Ceramic. Don't be a stranger. Please feel free to ping me directly on Discord. You can find me, mattdavis0351.eth. I'm more than happy to answer all your questions going forward.
Thank you, Matt, for coming in. We really appreciate it. And yeah, hope to see lots of great projects using your tech. So yeah, I would say Any final comments, Matt, before we wrap up?
Yeah, give me 1 second. I forgot Discord does that silly number thing. I'm pasting it in chat right now. So if you want my Discord handle, there you go. I'm also pingable with the other one, mattdavis351.eth on our forum. So you can ping me on the forum too. If you're not really into that synchronous Discord chat, you can ping me on the forum.
Awesome. Thanks for coming in, Matt. I think we'll wrap things up there. So again, this recording will be available hopefully in the next day. So yeah, feel free to check it out. Have a great rest of your day, everyone, and goodbye.